be recorded. And the reason why we're recording it is because we will send you a copy of the recording in case you would like to refer back to anything that was mentioned on the webinar. So just wanted to let you know that it is being recorded. My name is Cindy Massengill, and I'm a partner here at Emergent, previously known as PLS, Productivity Leadership Systems. If you're not familiar with our organization, I'll give you just a little bit of background. We're providers of leadership development. We provide coaching, training, consulting, and also facilitations for individuals, for teams, and at the organizational level. And our vision is to really, what we're hoping to do is help raise the consciousness of leadership in the Central New York region, and in doing so, allowing individuals and teams and organizations to reach their highest potential and beyond. I introduced the GoToWebinar panel earlier. If you have any questions, please feel free to shoot me a note at any time, or use the raise your hand feature as well. Before we get started with the topic of what it's like to build a high-performing team, I wanted to allow you to introduce yourself and to maybe share a little bit about why you chose to be here. What is it about this topic that attracted you to this 2 to 3 hour webinar? And if you don't mind, just for sake of understanding, I'm just going to go in order by the way you're listed alphabetically on the attendee list. So I'm going to start with Annette Green, but Annette, I'm having a hard time unmuting you. So you might want to see if you can unmute yourself and just tell us who you are and why you chose to be here today. Are you there, Annette? Okay, while Annette's getting situated, Ashley, I apologize. I'm going to skip over you because, oh, Annette doesn't have a mic and neither does Ashley. So let's go right to Benifer. Thank you. Are you there, Benifer? How about Catherine? Catherine?
Can you hear me?
I sure can, Catherine. Thank you.
Great. Hi. Yes, I'm with the Alzheimer's Association, and the term high-performing team really certainly sparked my curiosity. We at the Alzheimer's Association have been looking at various ways in which we can ensure that all of our teams are performing at its optimal benefit, as well as collaborating with each other as well too, so that we're not working in silos as either a chapter or within our entire organization, and working more effective and efficiently. We just recently went through a merger with our national organization, and therefore some of our processes have changed with that over the last year, and we are looking at better and more efficient ways to be working collectively together as a 7 chapters within New York State as well too. So when I look at high-performing teams, I'm thinking it from a lot of different means, and not just the team that I manage on a day-to-day basis at our chapter, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was thinking that same thing as you were talking, Catherine. Wow. Well, thank you, and thanks for sharing all that. And I believe that you will get some ideas from this webinar, and please do feel free to reach out to me afterwards if you'd like to chat more. But it's really my intention to share some different ideas, especially I'm going to be diving into some concepts from the work of Patrick Lencioni, but we'll talk more about that later, so welcome. How about Christy? Christy, oh, there you go. Hi, Christy.
Hi. I'm the manager of education services at NYSERNet, New York State's Education and Research Network. We're a not-for-profit who serve the colleges and universities of New York State. Our main focus is the CIO's office, and I have a couple conferences that I coordinate and training events that I coordinate that is focused for that office. So a lot of the trainings are technical. However, I could see high-performing teams being something that the CIOs want to strive for. So I'm kind of scoping this out with the thought that it might be something that I could offer to my membership.
Oh, great. Yeah, and Christy, I'd love to talk with you more about that. My background actually is technology, and my old clients used to be the CIOs of organizations. So I have an interesting perspective into that world. So good, I'm glad. I hope we get you some good ideas today.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you.
Welcome. And Corinne, good afternoon. Would you introduce yourself?
Okay. Hi, I'm Emergence Summer Intern. I go to Grove City College out in Western Pennsylvania, and I'm just going to be listening in on the call to hear how this webinar goes and what everyone has to offer.
Thanks, Corinne, and we welcome Corinne. She's done some great work for us over the summer, and really have appreciated all her dedication and support this summer, and glad you're here, Corinne. Welcome, Jeff Letterly. Did I pronounce your last name correctly, Jeff?
Yeah, you got it.
Good, good. I'm not sure if you were here when we first started, but I'm just giving a chance for our audience to introduce themselves. And why are you here? What drew you to the topic today or the webinar today?
Well, I have a small team now at POMCO that I manage, and we've been together for several years. I always feel like there's opportunity for growing there, but I think bigger focus today was thinking about my future, in that we recently went through a merger, and so my team will be completely changing. I'll be managing an existing set of people that I don't even know coming up in the next few months. And so I've heard they're high performing, but I just want to get some ideas about what to maybe do with them.
Awesome, Jeff. Thank you, and I'm so glad that you're here. I'm really feeling like the content today might give you some ideas about where to start. And again, I do invite you, reach out to me if you want to talk further after the webinar. But happy that you're here. Thanks for coming.
Sure. Thank you.
And Mr. Shafiq, how are you this afternoon?
Good. How are you, Cindy?
I'm good.
So my name is Shafiq Raymond. I am a software development manager at Aero Electronics. So the reason I'm here, especially for the high-performing team, being a global company, and there are tons of projects always across all regions happening. Would like to get some ideas on how to engage and be, get out from the team, from helping each other and supporting it. So really looking for some ideas from this webinar to drive the team.
Awesome. Thank you, Shafiq. Thank you for sharing all of that information. I invite all of you, please, I'll share my contact information at the very end, but if you want to continue further, I could talk about this. I could actually have a conversation about this topic for hours, which is not our intentions today. We will wrap up sharply at 3 o'clock, but I do invite you all to reach out to me if you want to continue the dialogue and just kind of brainstorm a little bit about where to begin. So the topic today is about our topic today is about high performing teams, and I wanted to start with what is a high performing team. This is a topic that we as an organization are incredibly passionate about. The amount of work that we have been doing with teams, especially over the last couple of years, has increased dramatically. recently read an article in the Harvard Business Review where they talked about the manager-employee collaborative activities has increased by 50% over the last 20 years. And they also talked about, they estimated that more than 3/4 or 75% of an employee's day is spent actually just communicating with their peers and colleagues. It's interesting when we think about what does it take for an organization to achieve their success. And I will state that organizations don't achieve great things because they have really talented skilled individuals. Organizations achieve great things because they're building great teams of people. And when I say that, it's not necessarily that we have these. I guess it's an added bonus that we have these really skilled people. But even on top of that, these really skilled people know how to work together. And I'll say that again. They know how to work together. And that's what really creates this idea of high-performing team. High-performing teams, they innovate faster, they can see mistakes more quickly, they have better solutions to problems, they're achieving better results, and there's even proof that high-performing teams have higher job satisfaction overall. And I think if we look at what separates a high-performing team to just a group of individuals working together, you will see that there is a common sense of purpose, there's a sense of commitment to each other and to the team's work that they're doing, and there's this really cool sense of synergy between the individuals on the team. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. Building a team is not about putting a bunch of smart, talented, skilled people together. It's really looking at how you can get all these different people working well together. And that ultimately decides the success of the actual team itself. The other article I want to reference is an article that came out of the New York Times. I didn't share the URL here, but if you do a web search for New York Times, Google, and Teams, I'm pretty sure that it'll be one of the first few results that come up on your screen. The article is called "What Google Learned from Its Quest to Build the Perfect Team." And it was an article in the New York Times. And what Google found from their research, I'm going to kind of net it out a little bit, but the article is really fascinating, is what they found from their research is the importance of this idea of psychological safety on teams. It's a sense of confidence that the team is not going to embarrass or reject or even punish you for speaking up. And it was made up of two components. The first component is this idea of equality and distribution of conversational turn-taking. Quite a tongue twister there, so I'll say it again. That the team was experiencing an equality and distribution of conversational turn-taking. And what that really meant is that with high-performing teams, everyone on the team gets a chance to speak and to be heard. And then the second element of this psychological safety was this and that team members had an average social sensitivity, meaning that they were skilled at intuiting how others felt based on their voice tone, their expressions, or even their nonverbal cues. And so what they found, netting it out in Google's research, is that all great teams had this sense of psychological safety. People felt like they could be heard and that they could speak up, and that there was a sensitivity to how people were feeling. People were able to intuit that something was wrong by their facial expressions, by their voice tone, and by any other nonverbal cues. You know, this really speaks to two skills that I think is really relevant for any leadership development curriculum. I promise I won't go on a soapbox here, but you know, two things. One is the importance of leaders to understand the implications of individual preferences. You know, you can use the DISC assessment, you could use the Myers-Briggs assessment. I'm sure there are others. In making sure that the team is aware of individual preferences so that they know how to best work together. I'll use the example of understanding the implications of having a group mixed of introverts and extroverts, for example. You know, it's not the importance here is not the fact that we don't necessarily want to have all extroverts or all introverts. It's that they know how to work best together based on their in understanding each other's preferences. And then the second thing I think it speaks to when you're thinking about building a leadership development curriculum is the importance of emotional intelligence, which speaks to that kind of social sensitivity that Google identified. You know, the ability to have empathy or social awareness around understanding how other people are feeling on the team to be able to address that. And so this leads me to the question, why do organizations fail to achieve strong teamwork? Or asked another way, what are the keys to organizations achieving really effective teamwork? And I want to go to Patrick Lencioni's work. Some of you may be familiar with his book called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And in his work, he presents that there are 5 keys to how organizations achieve teamwork. The first is that they trust one another. The second is that teams are able to engage in unfiltered conflict-type conversations around differing ideas. The third is that the team members are all committed to decisions and plans of action. The fourth is that the team holds each other accountable to those plans of action, not necessarily relying on the manager or the supervisor of the team, but that they're able to go to each other to hold each other accountable for the commitments that they're making to each other. And then the last is that the team focuses on achieving results that are collective based. You know, that there is a particular goal or result or desire that they all want to achieve, that they all can bite their teeth into, that they all feel like they're contributing to the same result. And we will talk about each of these 5 in a little bit more detail. Before we start, though, I do want to dive into each of those 5. I want to plant 2 seeds, and the first seed I want to plant is I'd like you to give some thought to this question. What's the biggest challenge in your organization to building and sustaining high-performing teams? And just give that some thought. Later in the webinar, I'm going to ask you to share whatever comes to mind to that question. The second thing I'd like to ask you to do is, as we go through each of these 5 elements that I just shared in a little bit more detail, the elements relating to what it takes to build a high-performing team, I'd like you to think about a team that you are currently a part of. So it could be a team that you're a part of at work, or it could be a team that you might be a part of, perhaps a volunteer organization outside of work, whatever. Just be thinking, just for context, as we go through each of these 5 elements, be thinking about a specific team that you're a member of, because as we go through, I'm going to ask you some questions just to put the material in a little bit of context. So I want to start with the very first element, which is building trust. You know, Patrick Lencioni talks about, again, this is based on his model of building high-performing teams. One of the reasons, the foundational reason why he believes organizations don't achieve really good teamwork is because there is this absence of trust. And when we talk about this absence of trust, we're talking about the it's the confidence that team members have that their peers' intentions are real, that they're good. they don't have a reason to be protective or careful in front of their teammates. We talk about this word vulnerability. They're comfortable in being vulnerable. They're not afraid to share their weaknesses. Hey, I screwed that up. You know, they're willing to admit when they made a mistake, and they're also comfortable asking their teammates for help. You know, the result of having a team that really feels like they trust each other, they can really focus, when they do have that trust, they can really focus on the work at hand. They're not trying to be strategic and hiding information or even being political with each other. So let me stop right there. I'm going to throw 3 questions at you as you think about the team that you are a part of, either one at work, it could be a high-level executive team that you're a part of, it could be a team of individuals that you're leading, or it could be a team outside of work, perhaps a volunteer group or a board that you're sitting on. I want to ask you 3 questions about that team, and by the way, I won't ask you to share your answers, but this is just for the sake of the context of the material. So when you're thinking about your team, do the team members quickly and genuinely apologize to one another when they say or do something inappropriate or possibly damaging to the team? So that's question 1. Question 2, do the team members openly admit their weaknesses and mistakes? And then the last question, do team members know about one another's personal lives, and are they comfortable discussing them? And by the way, I'm taking those questions from an assessment that comes out of the table group related to the 5 dysfunctions of a team. Just food for thought. How would you rate the team that you're thinking about right now, specifically in the area of trust? Would you rate them green? We'll use the color green as, yes, we got this. Would you rate them as a yellow? Not so much. You know, we're still working on it, but I'm positive we're going to get there. Or would you rate them red? And red would be no go, we don't have trust, and man, I gotta work on this one. So give it a rating scale of green, yellow, or red. And I'll give you a minute to think about that. Now, before we go to the next one, I want to pause right here. Does anybody have any questions, or would anybody like to comment on anything so far? You can do so by raising your hand or shooting a question over in the questions box. Okay, let's keep going. I want to move to the next area of focus of how teams achieve teamwork. And it's overcoming the fear of conflict. You'll see over to the right here, we've written in artificial harmony. When teams are not able to have constructive conflict, and I'll explain that in a second, what you get is artificial harmony. And I'll give you a story about that in a minute. But fear of conflict is this idea that people are comfortable speaking up, especially when they have a differing view or perspective. And that's what fear of conflict is really all about. It's we're distinguishing productive ideological conflict from destructive fighting. And what I mean by that, destructive fighting, is personal attacks. We're talking about the ability for a team to sit around a table and to share differing views, and to not feel like there will be repercussions from doing so. I'll share with you just a quick story. So this was a volunteer group I was involved with a couple of years ago. There was about 6 people sitting around the table. and we were discussing an idea, and someone threw out an idea on the table. We all went around the table and said, "Oh yeah, we're on board. Oh yeah, we're on board." And as soon as everybody walked out of the meeting, I happened to be part of an after-meeting conversation, which we all have experienced that before. But I was part of a conversation after the meeting in the hallway with two other individuals who outright admitted, "I'm not supporting that decision at all." And so while in the room, as we go around the table, we all say, "Yes, we agree." Outside of the room, we don't agree. And the reason why is because, well, I will tell you the reason why, my opinion, is it was a new team. We didn't know each other that well, so we didn't have a lot of trust between each other, number one. And so because we didn't have trust, we weren't comfortable sharing a differing idea or a differing view on the decision, and it was easier to go along versus speaking up. And so I'm sure we've all had that experience before. Here's some questions as you're thinking about your team. I want you to assess the team that you have in mind. Let's do the the green, yellow, red assessment. Here's the questions around conflict. When you think about your team, are team members passionate and unguarded in their discussion of issues? So when you think about the team that you have in mind, are they passionate and unguarded in their discussion of issues? During team meetings, are they compelling and not boring? And then the last question is, during team meetings, are the most important and most difficult issues put on the table to be resolved? So in other words, are the issues put on the back burner, or are they actually put on the table to be resolved? So take a minute to assess the team that you're thinking of. Give them a green if yes, thumbs up. Give them a yellow if we're working on it, or give them a red if you feel like no, this is definitely an area we could work on. Okay. So here's the third of 5 reasons why organizations fail to achieve teamwork. Is the teams have a lack of commitment. And because there's a lack of commitment, there's ambiguity around what we're actually looking to achieve. And when we talk about a lack of commitment, there's a lack of commitment in the decisions that are made. I'll give you the definition. The lack of commitment, it's defined by the 2 greatest causes of lack of commitment, which are the desire for consensus and then the need for certainty. And when we talk about the desire for consensus, it's this idea that to achieve buy-in, we need 100% complete agreement. And that's totally impossible. If we were to all sit around right now and say, where are we going to lunch after this webinar? We'd have all different ideas, right? And so the idea of the lack of commitment, what holds people back from getting commitment is that they believe everyone around the table needs to agree to the decision, which is totally untrue. What we're looking for is not necessarily 100% consensus. What we're looking for is for people to feel heard, going back to trust and conflict, right? And then once they're heard, can they support the decision even though it wasn't their first choice? That's the approach to go, getting support that way. The other part of commitment that really causes us to go sideways is the need for certainty. The need for certainty that the decision we're about to make is the right one. You know, people get really stalled when they're not sure if it's the 100% quote-unquote right decision, and they won't support something if they're not 100% sure. And one of the keys to getting commitment is the confidence that, okay, this is the best decision that we can make based on the information that we have in front of us, and getting people's commitment that they will support that decision. Having the lack of commitment creates this ambiguity around how are we going to move forward. let me give you some questions to ask when you're thinking about the team that you have in mind. So 3 questions. 1, do the team members know what their peers are working on and how they contribute to the collective good of the team? 2nd question, do team members leave the meetings feeling confident that their peers are completely committed to the decisions that were agreed upon during the meeting, even if there was initial agreement, or even if it wasn't their first choice? And then last, do team members end discussions with clear and specific resolutions and calls to action? I'm a big believer we should end every meeting 10 minutes prior to the committed end date so that we can go around the table and review who is doing what, by when, and why. Maybe even how as well, but we'll leave that one out. But everybody is clear when we leave the meeting who's doing what by when. Take a minute to assess the team that you're thinking of. Give them a green, yellow, or red, and I'll give you a minute to do that. Okay, 4th element. The 4th element we're talking about why organizations fail to achieve teamwork is because they avoid accountability. They avoid accountability. So here's what we're talking about when we're talking about accountability. It's the willingness of team members to call their peers on performance or behaviors that might hurt the team. So when we talk about this element, we're talking about team members going to each other to hold each other accountable for the promises and commitments that they made. They're not going to the leader. The leader or the manager or the supervisor of the team is not the sole source of holding people accountable. The team is holding each other accountable. You can't get there if there's an absence of trust, if there's a fear of conflict, and if there's a lack of commitment. But if you have all those 3 things, you can achieve this holding each other accountable concept. You know, it's exhausting if the manager is the sole source of holding each other accountable. You know, as leaders of your teams, how exhausting they can be. When they're achieving great teamwork, if I'm going to my peers and I'm calling them on the fact that they didn't do something that they said that they were going to do. So that's the avoidance of accountability, is when teams are avoiding holding each other accountable. So here, let me ask you the 3 questions associated with this element. Do the team members call one another about their deficiencies or unproductive behaviors? That can be pretty scary, right? But are we calling each other out on those? Are the team members deeply concerned about the prospect of letting down their peers? You know, is it in the forefront of my mind that I don't want to let my peer down? And the last question is, do team members challenge one another about their plans, about their approaches? So do they call each other out on deficiencies and unproductive behaviors? Question 1. Question 2, are they concerned, deeply concerned, about the prospect of letting their peers down? And then last, do the team members challenge each other about their plans and about their approaches? So take a minute to just rank the team that you're either leading or a team that you're a part of, green, yellow, or red, and then we'll go to the very last element. Okay, last element, why organizations fail to achieve teamwork, is the inattention to results. This one is an easy one if you have the other 4 underneath in the pyramid. Inattention to results. So describing this element, when I don't have attention to results, I'm more focused on my own individual status and my own individual ego. I'm putting that as a priority over my teams getting to their results, collective results. Let me give you an example. One of the greatest experiences that I had years and years ago, actually, I was part of a team, and we were each responsible. It was a technology company, and we were each responsible for managing the sales and supporting the salespeople on specific product lines. So we each had different manufacturers that we were responsible for internally for the internal salespeople. And I'll never forget how important it was that not only we each achieve our own goal that was associated to the product line that we were managing, but we also had a team goal. And whether I achieved my goal on the product lines that I was responsible for or not was actually really irrelevant, although that was associated to my compensation. What was really the focus of our bigger compensation was our entire team reaching a collective goal. And that's what we kept our eyeballs focused on. Not necessarily individual, I made my goal, you didn't. The conversation was always a part of our collective department goal. And it was tough, you know, we didn't always make it because someone's team fell short or someone's product line fell short. And towards the last 2 weeks of the month, we were always pitching in to see how we could help them get the sales for their particular product lines brought up. But that's what I'm talking about around having a collective goal that everybody on the team can really bite their teeth into. And it's interesting because I'll ask, a lot of people will respond here, and even in my example was revenue and profit based. But many organizations will use that as the collective goal for everybody to bite their teeth into. When in fact, people, I'll use an example, people in customer service aren't necessarily inspired by achieving a revenue goal. Yes, it's important, but what's important for them is achieving client satisfaction. So how do you come up with a goal that everybody can really be bought into and inspired for? And I encourage you, if you don't have that, to be thinking about that for your individual teams. Does everybody on the team have a I just lost my thought, bear with me. Does everybody on the team have motivation to achieve the collective results that everybody is focused on? It's challenging. Here's some questions to think about when you're assessing the team that you have in mind today around this element of inattention to results. Do the team members willingly make sacrifices, such as budget, turf, or headcount, in their departments or areas of expertise for the good of the team? For the good of the team. Second question, is morale significantly affected by the failure to achieve team goals? The answer you want that to be is yes. And then last question, are team members slow to seek credit for their own contributions, but quick to point out those of others? You want that answer to be yes. You know, you want them to be cheering their fellow teammates on, right? So take a minute to assess the team that you're thinking about, and then we'll go on to the next slide. Actually, I'm going to take a little talking break here. Here's what I want to do. I want to ask you all, just go through. Where did you, out of the 5 elements, just curious, share one element that you rated red and share one element that you rated green. So share one element that was green. You got this. And then which element did you rate red? Shafiq, I want to start with you. I'm going to go in order from bottom up, okay? Shafiq, you go first. Which one did you rate green and which one did you rate red? Just curious.
Yeah, so the green one is absence of trust. So the 3 questions that basically doesn't apply, so we're good there.
Okay.
I had a lack of commitment. That was just like I didn't know it's a red or orange is in between.
Yes.
So that was one of those red one, I would say. So
Good,
other ones
good,
are,
good.
yep,
That's good. I'm just want to take a poll where people feel they're at. So green light on trust, red light on somewhat red light on commitment.
that's correct.
Got it. Thanks, Shafiq. How about
Great.
Jeff? How did you score the team that you're thinking about?
Yeah, green on the absence of trust. And then I didn't really have a red, but I had some yellow. Avoidance of accountability. I didn't feel like all of those questions were totally there, especially the one about calling out peers and challenging them.
Good. Yeah, yeah. And you know, Jeff, you know, when we're saying that, that really people need help with understanding how do we do that. You know, Jeff, go check out that Google article in the New York Times. Were you on the call when I was talking about that? Were you on the webinar?
Yeah.
Okay. Check out that article. They talk about the idea of group norms. And I think when teams take the time to understand what their own group norms are, that can help with this holding each other accountable. Okay? So check that out. Let's see. Let's go to Corinne. Corinne, did you do it? Did you do were you assessing a team?
Yes. So
oh, good. I'm glad.
So we were good for absence of trust, or that level, the absence of trust, but we had a yellow, almost red for fear of conflict. So our team gets along very well. So when there is conflict, people are very, very hesitant to bring it up, and it may make the situation take a lot longer to solve.
Yeah, good. Very good. Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate that. So I want to comment a little bit about that, and I meant to bring it up when we were on that element. That is a really natural occurrence, especially when teams like each other, they like working together. They are fearful about hurting each other's feelings, and especially when something's happening where they need to have kind of this difficult conversation around a specific topic. And one of the things I want to suggest, if that's one that anybody on the call is thinking about, if you did a yellow or red on that fear of conflict, one of the things that you might want to consider is having a conversation with the team around what should be our best practices for having these difficult conversations. I have found that people tend to want to know if they've hurt someone's feelings or if they've done something wrong. People want to know, right? They don't want to know that there's a conversation going on behind their backs and they're not coming to them directly. So considering perhaps having a conversation with the team ahead of time on what should be our group norms or our best practices for how we deal with conflict, so that the rules of engagement are out on the table, and so when it does come up, it makes it just that much easier. So Corinne, thank you for bringing that up. And now I'm going to go to you, Christy. Where did you give me a green and give me a red?
I'm just going to struggle with that because every one of them is yellow for me. The
Good for you. Good for you.
Team that I is actually a volunteer team that only comes together for a few months out of the year because it's putting together a festival in the town that I live in. So we're dealing with all volunteer people that, they're not exactly BFFs, outside. We come together to put the festival on, and then we, part and go our ways. So it can be difficult sometimes, like what we're trying to do now, to be innovative and bring new things to the festival, because we have the fear of conflict. We have the lack of commitment. People don't make it to every single meeting and then are upset when decisions are made without their input. So yeah, it's a tough one when you're dealing with a volunteer scenario. And I have a couple committees that I run here at NYSERNet, and it's somewhat the same thing. You've got people that you can completely rely on, so everything here is green, but then you have people within the team that, you know, everything's yellow, if not red.
Good. Can I have an idea, which you may already be doing this, but can I throw an idea out to you, Christy?
Sure.
Okay. I would start with actually, I would start with the top of the pyramid. Don't tell Patrick Lencioni I'm saying this, but I would start with the top of the pyramid, in attention to results. Make sure that everybody is bought into what are we looking to achieve. Make sure there's at least support to that decision first, right? What are we looking to achieve? Then have a conversation about group norms and what are our rules of engagement. How will we deal with different perspectives? How will we make a decision? How will we deal with the possibility and probability that we're all not going to be able to make the meetings, but yet we can't let that hold up decisions, right? Because we're not going to move forward. So just talking about making sure everybody's aligned and supporting what's our goal, what's our result, and then coming up with the best practices or rules of engagement for how we will get to that goal or result. And food for thought. You may already be doing that.
No, that's a really good suggestion. Look at the end to get to the beginning.
Exactly. Perfect. Yeah. Kind of slowing down to go faster, right? Slow down a little bit. Let's talk about how we're going to roll, how we're going to operate, so that all those things are addressed right up front.
Yep. Okay.
All right. Thanks, Christy. Let's go to Catherine James. Catherine.
Yes. Let's see. I think for me, green is the inattention to results. I feel that the individuals that I'm thinking of in regards to the team are very committed to the mission and vision of the work. I think where certainly is yellow, yellowish red are the avoidance of accountability. And as you were talking about the, our team members talking to one another about their vulnerabilities, where there may have been disappointments and deficiencies upon work or behavior. I feel like oftentimes it's, and I know I'm probably enabling it, that they're coming to me with much of that contention.
Right. Yeah. In a few minutes, Catherine, we're going to talk about what you can do to address that. But so common, right? So common. And you really want to model the behavior for what you're expecting them to do. There's certainly things that need to come to you, right, as the leader of the group, but then there's other things that they can handle amongst themselves, and it's really just modeling that. Again, looking at how are we going to roll here in this area of holding each other accountable, and so perhaps just having a dialogue with the group on what that looks like. But thank you. Thanks for sharing that, Catherine. Let's go to Benifer. How about you, Benifer? Are you still with us, or did you have to leave? She informed us that she had to leave, so I'm going to skip her. And then, Ashley, you do not have a mic, and Annette, you don't have a mic. Okay. Ashley and Annette, though, I do offer, if you want to shoot us through the message box, your green and your red, I'll read them out to the group. And then in the meantime, I want to talk quickly to go to Catherine's question. Talk quickly about what the role of a leader is within each of these 5 elements. So what is the role of a leader? Let's start with trust. the role of the leader to build this culture of trust on the team is to actually demonstrate vulnerability first. Don't kill me for that one. But really be genuine. You know, don't create an environment that punishes vulnerability by asking for help or by failing, but actually being the first one to go to be vulnerable with your group. I know that you all are going to read that New York Times article. It's really great. But there was a really great story in there about the leader of the team setting the tone when he as he took position as being the manager of this team of people at Google. One of the things that he did was he got everybody together and he shared some vulnerabilities about himself, about an illness that he was dealing with, and how he was feeling about that illness. And it really set the tone for people to be open about, oh, let me go back. So he talks about the illness and then having a dialogue about how that may impact his performance. And I think when people see that the leader is open to what their deficiencies could be or what they're struggling with, other people on the team will be willing to do it as well. Patrick Lencioni recommends that one of the exercises that you can do is take like a DISC or Myers-Briggs assessment and have people do their own self-assessment around their preferences in either one of those tools, but then go around and have the group share what the implications are of their results, of their preferences on the performance of the team. What do they see as both a strength to the team based on their preferences, and what about their preferences could be a hindrance to the team as well, and being really open and honest about that. Build a culture that allows people to be somewhat vulnerable to where they might fall short. So the role of the leader is to really demonstrate it first, go first. When you think about the next element, the fear of conflict, what is the role of the leader to really build this culture where people are more comfortable with conflict? Let's face it, most people, maybe I'll say many people, avoid conflict without a doubt. You know, they do whatever it takes to avoid any type of conflict, which is pretty normal. The role of a leader is to mine for conflict. So what I mean by that is, if you're sitting at a table with 7 of your direct reports and everybody is agreeing on the whatever decision is being made, encourage people to share a different perspective. You know for a fact that there is probably not complete agreement, especially on bigger, complicated issues. Might be easy on some things, but for the most part, there's always somebody that's going to have a different view. Mine for it, ask for it, dig for it. Ask people to make up a differing view if they're having a hard time sharing what they're really feeling. You know, get people comfortable with being respectful and sharing a different perspective. So mining for it is the role of a leader. And then allow it to occur. When people are having a dialogue, as long as it, even if their voice tone is being raised, as long as they're still being respectful, but they're having a passionate dialogue around different opinions, don't cut it off. Let it happen. Just make sure that people are still being respectful, right? In the third element, this lack of commitment, the role of the leader is to force clarity and closure. Also be comfortable with the idea that the decision could be wrong, that it could go sideways. Force clarity and closure at the end of every meeting. Who's doing what by when? Make sure that there's support for something, even for support for a decision, even if it wasn't someone's first choice. Can you still support it? That's commitment. And then when we go to avoidance of accountability, the role of a leader is to allow the team to serve as the first and primary accountability mechanism. Now, there are certainly situations where the leader must be the first point of contact. Absolutely. Especially when dealing with corrective issues, corrective performance issues, and things like that. But if my teammate promises me that they're going to get a PowerPoint presentation to me by Friday, and Friday comes along and I don't have that PowerPoint, I'm not going to go to my manager. I'm going to go to my peer, and I'm going to say, where's the PowerPoint, right? Allow people to hold their team, hold each other accountable, and encourage that. And then the last, the inattention to results, is just setting the tone that we're focusing on collective outcomes. There's nothing individual. Of course, everybody's going to have individual goals. But when the team comes together, make sure that everyone on the team is aware of how each other's actions and performance contributes to the bottom line of that result. How does what I do matter? How does what you do matter? How does it contribute to the bottom line results that we're all focused on? And make sure that the dialogue is aligned with that we're aligned with our collective goals. And that's just some ideas about what the role of a leader is. Let me stop right here before I get to the big pondering question. Does anybody have any questions? Or I invite your comments or perspectives as well. You can use the raise your hand feature on the GoToWebinar control panel, or shoot me a question in the question box as well. Well, how about if we go to this question? What is the biggest challenge in your organization to building and sustaining high-performance teams? What is it? Let's at least hear from 3 people. We have 3 minutes. What do you think it is? I'm going to go ahead and unmute anybody, and you can speak whenever you're ready. Christy, I have muted you, and Catherine. What is it?
This is Christy. In my organization, all of our directors are introverts. So as an extrovert, I was a trainer for 15 years. It's really, really tough to pull we're a small organization, and it's really, really tough to pull together meetings or anything that involves multiple people, because they want to handle everything by email or sidebar conversations, and it's really been a struggle. I've been here 3 years, and it's definitely been a struggle because every one of them are introverts.
I get it. Yeah, I get it. So maybe it's time to have the conversation about our rules of engagement. You know, just have you done? Has the group done the Myers-Briggs? You said introverts. Have you done Myers-Briggs with everybody? They
did a long time ago prior to me coming, and the other thing about the organization is I was hired 3 years ago, and I'm the shortest person that's worked here as far as time goes. The rest of them are 12 plus years.
Right. Yeah. Christy, what would you say to this question? What is the implication of people having sidebar conversations and handling things by email? What's the result of that?
It's definitely a lack of communication to keep everybody aware of what's going on. It tends to end up being the telephone chain, and you know what happens by the time it gets to the last person of the telephone chain. Yeah. So one idea is maybe you make a recommendation that the group gets together to talk about what you've observed, or maybe you mention this to your manager first. You know, things are falling through the cracks. Things get done slower than I think things could get done quicker if we look at other ways of communicating. And I'm wondering how open the group would be to having a dialogue together to talk about how we best operate and how we best communicate together.
You know, just inviting the conversation. It sounds like this is a team you are a part of as opposed to a team you're leading.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what do you think your manager would say to proposing having a conversation about how we best communicate together and the norms, our group norms?
I think he would be, that whole avoiding conflict would be red.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. What do you think about just starting with a dialogue with your supervisor, just to kind of talk about what your concerns are about things falling through the cracks, things going a little bit slower than maybe they need to? And
yeah, I think it's definitely something that I'm hoping to do. I'm reading a book right now called Crucial Conversations that I'm hoping will give me some tips on how to do it eloquently.
Yeah. Christy, I'm such a big fan of that book. I'm so happy to hear that. And I'd love, after the webinar or some date in the future, please reach out to me and I can help you create the format to that conversation if you'd like it. If you'd like it. That's a great place to start. Really good. Really good. All right, my time says 3:01, so I want to stick to the time frame that we agreed to. Thank you, everybody, for being on the call today. Really appreciated you being here, and gosh, I hope you got something out of it. We are so passionate about the idea of helping organizations build high-performing teams. If you would like more information, please do feel free to reach out to me. My email is on the screen. Happy to talk with you at any time in the future. And have a great week, everybody. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.